Uncovered bombshell recordings reveal former Post Office boss Paula Vennells may have known that subpostmaster's accounts could be altered remotely. The disgraced CEO originally told MPs back in 2015 now, 2015, almost 10 years ago, that it was impossible for accounts to be accessed remotely. But according to the audio tapes uncovered by Channel 4 News, Vennells' team claims she was fully briefed about the existence of Fujitsu's covert operations team entering subpostmasters' accounts. More than 900 subpostmasters were convicted of theft, fraud and false accounting due to faults in the infamous Horizon software. This shocking injustice recently thrown back into the spotlight in the hit ITV drama Mr Bates versus the Post Office, based on campaigner Alan Bates's quest for the truth. Vennells wouldn't comment on the recordings but insists she's focused on cooperating fully with the inquiry, and the inquiry's back, I think, for 15, I think it's 15 weeks. Hold on a second, I even jotted it down. The public inquiry turns next week. 15 weeks of what they're calling blockbuster hearings involving former cabinet ministers, chief executives, chairmen and judges. And Vennells will give evidence over 3 days next month. It almost beggars belief that for 9 years she has known about this.
Yep.
And that these people, that the poor postmasters have just had to put up with this for so long.
I'm surprised she thought she'd got to get away with it.
Yeah,
because there's so much that's being revealed now.
In this day and age,
you must have felt a sense of real kind of just being brazen kind of arrogance to think that actually none of this will be uncovered. Look, I think the bottom line here is, yes, of course, a lot of unsavory details will come out about this. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. But the Post Office shouldn't have had the power to play judge, jury and executioner, particularly for this long. No. This should have been sorted out a lot sooner. That is the bottom line here. I mean, we're going to hear more about who knew what and all of that. And at some point it will get lost in the news cycle. But at this point, it's clear that the
trouble is, I'm certainly not going to defend her. And I mean, the story of this, we were reporting on this about 4 or 5 years ago with Nick Wallace, the journalist that uncovered it. We used to talk about it on the radio, and I was forever saying, you know, why is this not a front page story every day almost? And it sort of was not so much kicked into the long grass. It wasn't kicked anywhere. It was
900.
It was indeed like lots of people involved in this. My fear is that ultimately there will clearly be, there's obvious wrongdoing here, and there's clearly some characters in this story that you think, you know, mate, you should be in jail for the way you handled this. But I think there's probably going to be many more that were part of a little part of it that didn't know the full picture.
Well, I mean,
I'm not excusing it.
I mean, you say you're not going to defend Paula Vennells, and nor am I, because I'll get my head chopped off. But all I would say is, if you read the transcript, what they say in the audio tapes, what they basically say is they've told Paula Vennells that there's been this allegation about the Bracknell operation. This is the operation to rejig the figures remotely. And they're looking into it. They haven't told her, this is what we're doing and we can do it.
And that is my point.
My charge against Paula Vennells over this whole thing is not that she's a sinister, evil person who screwed lots of postmasters. It's that she was an utterly negligent chief executive who never followed up on any of the smoke signals that something was deeply wrong with her operation and the people who work for her. And that is a chief executive's job.
Yeah, and when you're talking about that,
doesn't it?
That many.
When you put all of the evidence out there in one hit under the big tent of evidence, you look at it and go, well, anybody could have spotted that. But all of those individuals, even her, and I think you're absolutely spot on, Ed, that there is ineptitude here and negligence more than there is necessarily, in her case, it might not be criminality, legally speaking. It might.
Right,
it might
one of the terrible things that's wrong with this country is we never put the boss class in jail.
That's absolutely
Exactly.
spot
You're
on.
right.
But I do think that is one of the issues, that it's as a whole, it's a horror story.
Absolutely.
And people need to be responsible, regardless of their role in it.
But the negligence seems to be off the scale in this particular case. It's such a comedy of errors and so many people being so particularly negligent in this case that it led to so many people, you know, like you said, we never put the boss classes in jail. It's the sub-postmasters who went to jail. It's their families that suffered. It's them that were alienated from their businesses and forced out.
I mean, even at the time, surely they must have looked around and said, you know what, an awful lot of these postmasters are fiddling them.
I mean, it's a horrible thing to say. It's a fascinating subject. Very early on, I had the lady who wrote the drama on my Times radio show, and I asked her this question.
Have you got a Times radio show?
The point is that, look, I'm trying to get some listeners, OK? So I asked this lady, I said, what is, I said exactly that question. And she said, what became clear to me, it's an amazing kind of insight, I think, is that the boss class thought all the sub-postmasters were ripping them off.
Yeah.
Right.
They then put in a
biased.
computer system that said, all the sub-postmasters are ripping you off. And it became, for them, a virtuous circle.
Huge
rather than the
confirmation
other way
bias
around.
of the system.
Exactly.
And they'd thought that of sub-postmasters for years, apparently, hadn't they? They'd always thought,
that's right.
Baked into our business model is that
right.
some of these guys are going to rip us off. So when the Fujitsu boys came along, they went, oh, well, it's proved exactly what we thought.
Right.
It turned out to be utter bonkers nonsense.